Many accept Atma Vichara or the path of self-inquiry as a technique or a method. This Atma Vichara that is based on question, the question, who am I? Many understand it as a methodology. But self-inquiry is the essence of every religion, should be the essence of spiritual life. Because what is spiritual life if not to look for yourself? Self-inquiry can sound like weird for many because we are accustomed that religion is for answers. So many religions preach and give answers to your questions. Answers about what is the goal of your life, if there is a God, where this God lives, what he wants, what he like, what he doesn't like. But a spiritual path that is based not on faith, not in belief, not in answers, but in doubt, in a question, it is something special. And especially when we talk about a question that have no answer. Because there is no answer that fit this question. I mean not intellectual or verbal answer. Because the only answer to the question of who am I it's you. It is not, please hear me, try to understand exactly. I don't say you will have an answer. I don't say you will answer. You will be the answer. You become the answer. And as long as you don't become the answer, the question will continue. Who am I? Who am I? Only those who become the answer, the tshuva. Only those who come back to the divine, Lashuv Lahei, can say, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Or I am the path, the truth, and life. Me and the Father are one. The Father is in me, I am in the Father. Means only those who become the answer really understand what self-inquiry means. Because self-inquiry it's nothing else than a finger pointing to the moon. A finger indicate the reality of your being. And that reality is that I exist. Who am I will lead you to the ultimate answer that you exist. You as existence. That is not intellectual. I don't mean an answer like I exist, but not intellectually. Like when somebody asks you, do you exist? Your answer will be yes, but without thinking, without asking your mind, without trying to remember some book or some teacher in a far past that taught you that you exist. I exist, come from the deep of your being, from consciousness itself. I exist, that cannot be doubted. Because even if you doubt it, there is a doubter that exists. Somebody, something exists. There is existence. You are existence. And it's not acquire knowledge or information that you can forget in some way. There is no way to forget that you exist. And not only that, you are aware that you exist. That is the reason you cannot forget it. You cannot ignore it, because you know that you exist. For the simple reason, you are not only existence, you are consciousness. So you are conscious that you exist. And existence and consciousness are two aspects of your beingness. So it is very difficult to separate I exist from the fact that I know that I exist. I am aware, there is awareness of existence because you are Satchit Ananda, existence, known consciousness, and bliss, Ananda. This pure presence that exists and is conscious of its existence cannot be ignored and cannot be forgotten, but can be gradually covered by qualities, attributes that we are added or cover that pure consciousness. I exist and I know that I exist, or I am and I know it, are direct expressions of consciousness itself. But when we talk about consciousness being covered, we talk about attributes and qualities that belongs to a much more later level in the cosmic manifestation process. I mean, from the level of thought, mind. So that is attributes, qualities that cover the original, pure observation. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Patanjali Maharishi told with us about yoga. Yoga is not, as many think, a union between the individual soul and the absolute or Brahman, but it's more to be aware, to develop awareness of the very fact that the union already exists. That existence is the one without the second. Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha means that this yoga happens, this realization happens when there is a cessation of the mental activity. And that is the way many understand this sutra. But thoughts never disturb anybody I mean, if you meditate or try to concentrate in some subject, any subject, the thoughts of your neighbor will not disturb you. If other persons think, this will never be a disturbance for you. In the same way, thoughts are not an obstacle. The real obstacle is the identification with the thoughts. Thoughts are not an obstacle, but if you think, then there is a disturbance. So the real problem is the identification with the mental activity. And that is what Patanjali Maharishi means. In other words, yoga happens when there is not identification with the mental modifications. And the same Patanjali continue in the Samadhipada. In the Sutra 3, Tada drashtuh swarupivastanam. Then, along with the cessation of the mental modifications, the observer remains in his true nature. Then, along with the cessation of the mental activity, consciousness, perception, observation remains or rests in his original position. In other words, whenever there is observation without identification with the mental activity, observation stay in its original situation, in its original nature. Meditation is observation without the influence of the mind, without any interference of the mind. And as long as you observe, watch, you can be sure there is no identification. Many of us make efforts to advance in meditation and make efforts to concentrate, to pay attention, to observe, to watch. But the real problem is not lack of awareness, but the identification with the thoughts. That is the real obstacle, because at the moment identification disappears, the observation comes back to his original state. Only then, in the state of observation, the quantum jump can happen. That quantum jump from what you think you are to your reality or what you really are. From what you think you are, a doer, that is the position this identification take. That is the reason in Sanskrit we call the ego the doer, ahankar, because it is an idea that is always the doer. It is the feeler of our feelings. It is the thinker of the thoughts. It is the doer of the actions. Life happens by itself, but the ego go and think himself to be the doer of everything. Feelings appear, but the egoic phenomenon think, I feel. Thoughts happens even without or with your agreement, but you think, I think. Many activities happens. You become old. Running, jumping, singing, all this is happenings. Life happens through you, but the egoic phenomenon think, I am the doer. Somebody compare it to somebody who sit in front of the ocean, and when the waves come, he say like this, and when the waves go, imagine he controlled the ocean. Look at yourself before 10 years ago. Remember all your plans and projects and compare it with what's going on today. You will be surprised how life happens without asking about your projects. And where you think you will be in another 10 years, what are your projects for another 20 years? So when we talk about this jump from what you think you are to what you really are, we talk about, instead of being the doer, be beingness or observation established in itself. And in the next sutra, Sutra 4, Patanjali says something very interesting. Vritti sarupyam itaratra. Vritti sarupyam itaratra. And that means that in other states there is identification with the mental modifications. You pay attention to the words. Patanjali say that in any other state that is not observation will be identification. And that is my suggestion for meditation. Simple observation, no techniques, no methodology. Simple watch. Watch your body, your breathing. After be aware of your body, you continue to develop and advance, and you can try with your thoughts. to see, to watch, to be aware of your thoughts, ideas, concepts, conclusions. And then with your emotions, feelings, until consciousness can be conscious of itself, or awareness, it's aware of itself. You become awareness. And we talk about identification. But what is the source of that identification? What is that identification? That has a name. I thought, I idea, I feeling, and emotion. This I idea or thought is the name of identification. That means that it is not only that you as a human being think, but you are thought. It is a very different truth. I think, then I am thought. René Descartes was very near with his cogito ergo sum, or I think, therefore I am. Near, but not exactly. Keter Shem Tov, it's a book from the Hebrew tradition that touch exactly the essence. בחלק ראשון, אות נ"ו, or the first part, 56. You say, כי במקום שאדם חושב במחשבה, שם הוא כולו. Because in the place where a person think, that person entirely, completely is in that thought. And that is right. You are, all of you, where the thought is, because you are a thought. What we think we are, and we live according to what we think we are, not to what we really are. And it's exactly that. We live according to what we think we are, because what I think I am is a thought. It is an idea made of a lot of ideas I hear in my life, from my parents, my neighbors, my family, my friends, my boss, etc., etc. And who am I is exactly that. No more opinions, but see what you really are. This idea or thought It's identification, and can be identification with your name, with your country, with your ideology, a culture, a tradition, a form, a body, the history of that body. Identification transforms you in somebody. Identification transforms you from nobody to somebody, to being impersonal to be a person, from nothingness to something. You see the word in Hebrew, ani and ayin. Identification transforms you from ayin to ani. And at the moment you become you, you will be surrounded by infinite not you. At the moment identification make me be me, there is a lot of things that are not me. And then simultaneously is you are created and the others are created, and that creates something that is very interesting. The world changed, the reality changed, because from this moment you begin to move in a dual reality, in a world of subject and object, in a reality of a subject that is close in a form and in a mind, observe, perceive, know. Objects that are perceived, known, observed. And this is the duality, the relative world, where the subject will live a life looking for answers in his environment, looking for answers, reasons to live, the meaning of his life in the environment, in the other.